Hi everyone! Before we get into this audiobook, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button and drop a like. It helps me out a lot as well as contributes a lot to the channel. Now, let's get into the story. I hope you enjoy. Rain lashed against the cathedral window, smearing the forest into an impressionistic blur around the Alpha's manor. Elara observed the pack scurrying between buildings, heads bowed against the deluge, driven by purpose. A collective, each member vital, each devoted to the greater good. She was to be their lodestar, their Luna, yet she felt like a worker bee confined to a gilded cage. Her fingertips lingered on the chilled glass, a barrier as tangible as the heavy mantle of expectation. She recalled a time when the woods were not a prison. As a girl, she'd slip away from obligations, her steps soundless on the verdant moss, her laughter spiraling through the boughs. Every hidden brook was known to her, each sunlit glade, every clandestine trail. Hours melted as she studied nature's quiet drama, the steadfast might of ancient oaks, the vivid hues of wildflowers bravely piercing the soil. Unfettered liberty had been her very sustenance, curiosity the star charting her course. A tremor traced its way down her spine, the echo of a memory both beloved and laced with sorrow. She shut her lids, and the essence of pine and damp earth flooded her senses, instantly transporting her. Flashback, Elara, her mother's tone, though gentle, held resolve, recalling her from the wildflower haven she'd been immersed in. The Alpha Council has arrived. The hour has come. Barely 15. Elara scrunched her nose. For what, mother? Must it be now? I almost snared the most exquisite butterfly. Her mother's smile held a touch of melancholy as she smoothed a stray lock of hair behind Elara's ear. It cannot be delayed, my dear. This concerns your future, the destiny of the pack. Elara understood, of course. Every young woman within the pack knew this day loomed. The day the Alpha Council scrutinized them, assessing their merit, and choosing a consort for the Alpha. Tradition, a sacred trust. The great hall pulsed with Alphas, their presence exuding power, their gazes piercing and calculating. Liam, barely out of his teens himself, stood ramrod straight beside his sire, his gaze like frozen shards, his countenance inscrutable. Already a figure of legend, the most potent Alpha in memory. Elara remembered the judging stares, the murmured comments that trailed her progress, the crushing weight of anticipation. She had attempted to meet Liam's eyes, hoping for some spark, some inkling of connection. But his gaze remained frigid, detached. The selection itself passed in a haze. The timeless rituals, the somber declarations, the accumulated history of the pack pressing in. Then Alpha Kale, Liam's father, stepped forward, his voice resonating through the hall. Elara of the Willow Creek Pack, you are chosen. You will be bound to Alpha Liam, and together you shall steer our pack toward an epoch of strength and prosperity. A communal sigh of relief rippled through the assembly, and Elara experienced a curious disassociation, as if she were a mere spectator in a performance. She sought out her parents, finding pride and relief mirrored in their expressions. Their daughter had been selected, she had fulfilled her purpose. Liam offered his arm, the contact perfunctory, cold. Welcome, he intoned, devoid of any warmth. That night, cloistered in her chamber, Elara wept, not from a lack of comprehension regarding the importance of her role, but from the chilling certainty that freedom was lost to her. The wildflowers, the hidden trails, the wind's secrets all would be supplanted by duty, by expectation, by the frigid reality of her gilded cage. End flashback. Elara's eyes snapped open, the rain still bombarding the glass. The memory was a persistent ache, a constant memento of the girl she had been, now submerged beneath layers of responsibility. A delicate rap at the door startled her. "Elara, supper awaits." Liam's voice was hushed, yet his presence undeniable. Drawing a steadying breath, she smoothed the shimmering fabric of her gown. Beautiful, stitched with intricate silver patterns, a symbol of her elevated station. But it felt like mere costuming, a role she played for an audience. "I shall be there presently," she responded, her tone carefully even. The mirror revealed her reflection. Eyes, once alight with curiosity, now held the shadows of melancholy. Her face was wan, her expression guarded. She scarcely recognized the woman staring back. The dining hall felt immense and austere, the lengthy table gleaming beneath the cascade of a crystal chandelier. Liam was already enthroned at the head, his posture unyielding, his gaze fixed on the vacant space before him. Servants glided through the room, placing dishes of artfully arranged food on the table. "Good evening, Liam," Elara offered as she assumed her place opposite him. "Elara," he acknowledged, his tone clipped. He avoided her gaze. The silence stretched, thick with discomfort. Elara toyed with her food, its delicate flavors registering faintly. "The council has been pressing me regarding border security," Liam announced, finally cleaving the silence. "There have been reports of rogues." "Rogues?" Elara inquired, affecting interest. "Do they present a threat?" "Potentially," Liam stated, his jaw hardening. "I have reinforced security. I expect you to remain within the estate's perimeter until the threat is resolved." "As you wish," Elara replied, her tone uninflected. The confinement was tightening, the bars drawing nearer. They ate in silence for a span, broken only by the soft chime of silverware against porcelain. "The Midsummer Festival approaches," Elara initiated, yearning to steer the conversation elsewhere. "Have you settled on the nature of the celebrations?" Liam sighed, abandoning his fork with a faint clatter. "The festival retains its importance, assuredly. It is a tradition. But my focus lies elsewhere. The pack's safety is paramount." "Tradition holds value too, Liam," Elara countered, her voice gaining a slight edge. "It forms the very fabric of our unity." "Sentimentality is a luxury we can ill afford," Liam responded, his gaze finally meeting hers. It was cold, unyielding, hard. Elara averted her eyes, her spirits plummeting. There was no reaching him, no genuine accord to be found. He perceived her as a duty, an obligation, not as a breathing soul. "Anything further?" Liam questioned, his tone impatient. Elara shook her head, pushing her plate away. "No, nothing." The meal concluded as it had commenced, in silence and rigid formality. Elara excused herself, retreating to her private sanctuary, the burden of solitude pressing down. As she lay in the bed, the rain continuing its relentless rhythm, Finn surfaced in her thoughts. His understated strength, his kind eyes, the way he perceived her, not as Luna, but as simply Elara, a clandestine thought, a perilous desire. But in the suffocating gloom of her gilded existence, he was the sole beacon of light she could find. The Omega was the only one that saw the real Luna, trapped inside of a role. Whispers in the wildwood Elara slipped from the pack house like a phantom, the heavy oak door latching behind her with a quiet snick that echoed her defiance. The air tasted of damp pine needles and rich loam, a balm to her senses after the pack house's cloying perfumes, which served as a constant reminder of her Luna status. She drew her cloak tighter, the rough wool a welcome texture against the fine silks she was expected to favor. She craved the wildwood, its untamed embrace a necessity to breathe freely. The trees greeted her with a silent, leafy nod, their boughs like welcoming arms. Underfoot, the forest floor cushioned her steps with a tapestry of fallen leaves and yielding moss. Deeper she walked, past the regimented paths and sculpted gardens near the house, pulled toward the wood's ancient, untouched core. A murmur of a hidden stream beckoned, its melody a soothing draught for her troubled soul. The stream trickled into a sun-dappled glade, light fracturing through the canopy to paint shimmering mosaics on the water. Wildflowers exploded in vibrant hues along the banks, a defiant splash against the somber green. And there, kneeling beside the water, was Finn. He sketched intently in a time-worn, leather-bound book, his brow creased in concentration. Lost in his art, he didn't sense her approach. The fractured sunlight rendered him almost spectral, his silver hair catching the light like filaments of moonspun silk. Elara hesitated, uncertain whether to intrude upon his private sanctuary. Yet the sight of him, so at peace in this feral haven, proved too alluring. "Finn?" she murmured, her voice barely audible. He started, his head jerking up, his gray eyes widening in surprise. Color bloomed across his pale cheeks. Snapping the sketchbook shut, he seemed to be concealing a secret. "Luna, Elara," he stuttered, rising. He dipped his head, a gesture of deference that always chafed her. "Please, Finn, just Elara," she urged. "And no bowing, not here." His gaze searched hers, a fleeting, enigmatic expression crossing his face. "As you wish, Elara," he replied softly. She drifted closer, drawn to the wildflower's riotous display. "What are you capturing?" she inquired, striving for a light tone. After a moment's pause, he revealed the open page. It was a meticulous study of wildflowers, each delicate detail rendered with painstaking care. Elara's breath caught. "It's extraordinary," she whispered. "You have such talent." He blushed anew, his eyes dropping to the drawing. "Just wildflowers," he muttered self-deprecatingly. "More than that," Elara countered. "You've captured their very essence, their spirit. I've never seen anything quite like it." He lifted his gaze, a quiet intensity burning within. "They speak to me," he confessed softly. "The forest speaks to me. I feel its energy, its life force." Elara understood perfectly. She too felt the wood's thrumming pulse, the trees' tacit language, a language Liam seemed deaf to. "What are their names?" she asked, indicating the flowers in the sketch. "These are wood anemones," Finn explained, his voice gaining assurance as he spoke of his passion. "And these are dog violets. And over there, near the stream, some early purple orchids." He gestured towards the living examples with graceful precision. Elara followed his hand, her eyes widening as she recognized the delicate blooms. "I'd never known their names," she admitted. "I've simply seen them as flowers." A gentle, almost diffident smile illuminated Finn's features, transforming his face. "The forest teems with secrets," he said. "One must only learn to listen." He began to elucidate each plant's properties, his voice animated with fervor. He spoke of their medicinal uses, their place in folklore, their veiled meanings. Elara listened, captivated as he unveiled the wood's hidden lore, teaching her how to identify edible species, differentiate between toxic and harmless berries, and locate water in parched landscapes. He spoke of the caw, interconnectedness of every living thing, the ecosystem's fragile equilibrium. Elara had never felt so entwined with the natural world, so vibrantly alive. "You know so much," she remarked, awed. "How did you learn all of this?" He shrugged, averting his gaze. "I've always gravitated to the forest," he replied. "I spent my childhood exploring these woods. My grandmother imparted some knowledge, and the rest I discovered myself." Elara detected a thread of melancholy in his voice, a trace of loneliness. She knew Omegas were often relegated to the periphery of pack society, their talents unacknowledged, their voices unheard. She wondered if Finn had been shunned for his devotion to the forest, for his unique gifts. "The pack fails to recognize your wisdom," she said, her voice edged with indignation. "They should be learning from you, not disregarding you." Surprise lit his eyes. "It hardly matters," he countered softly. "I don't require their approbation. I possess the forest." But it did matter, Elara thought, that someone as gentle and discerning as Finn was ignored, his talents left to wither. It was yet another injustice, another manifestation of the pack's stultifying traditions and insular minds. A twig snapped nearby, shattering the tranquility. They both swiveled, their gazes sweeping the surrounding trees. A young pack member, scarcely out of pack, adolescence, stood at the edge of the glade, embarrassment coloring his face. "Luna Elara," he stammered, bowing. "Alpha Liam sent me to retrieve you. He requires your presence at the pack house." Elara's heart plummeted. The mundane world, with its obligations and demands, was summoning her back. She met Finn's gaze, a silent apology conveyed in her eyes. "I must return," she said, regret coloring her tone. He nodded, his expression guarded. "Of course, Luna Elara," he replied, his voice once more formal. For a heartbeat she lingered, desiring to articulate something, anything, to bridge the chasm that had abruptly opened between them. But the words lodged in her throat. "Thank you, Finn," she said at last, "for sharing the wildwood secrets." She turned and followed the young pack member toward the pack house, leaving Finn alone by the stream. The wildflower's fragrance lingered in the air, a poignant reminder of their shared communion, a glimpse of a life lived on different terms. As she walked, Elara vowed to find a way to share Finn's wisdom with the pack, to demonstrate the value of his singular gifts. She had no clear plan, only the firm intention. For Finn, and ultimately, for herself, the forest seemed impossibly distant. The language of the forest floor, Finn explained, was a palimpsest of secrets, his voice a hushed tone that barely stirred the quiet foliage. Kneeling, he indicated subtle indentations in the soft earth. "Dear, a young doe, I'd wager, judging by the delicate imprints and the length of her stride. Notice the moss, disturbed only on the far edge. That reveals her direction." Elara settled down beside him, her senses straining to decipher the landscape the way he did so effortlessly. The air, redolent with the fragrance of pine needles and fertile earth, now seemed vibrant with nuances she'd previously missed. She'd always prided herself on her observant nature, a necessary attribute for a future Luna, yet Finn possessed a profound awareness, a deep-seated connection to the natural world that stirred something within her. He instructed her on differentiating between the tracks of hare and squirrel, deciphering the faint signs of a fox's visit, the lingering musk on a tree's rough bark. He spoke of the woods as a sentient being, a thriving ecosystem where each creature played an integral part, its voice a symphony only those attuned could appreciate. The alphas they consider the forest a commodity, Elara remarked, a touch of acrimony tinging her words. A hunting ground, a place to assert dominance. Lifting his gaze, Finn's eyes, shaded the color of verdant moss agate, reflected the sunlight filtering through the leafy ceiling. They only perceive the surface, he countered gently. They miss the richness beneath. The forest yields more than just lumber and game. It bestows wisdom, solace, and a sense of belonging. He rose and extended a hand to her. His touch was feather-light, yet an unexpected current surged through her, warming her from fingertips to hairline. She accepted his assistance, letting him draw her upright. The air seemed to shimmer with an unspoken tension, an acknowledgement of the budding connection between them. As they ventured deeper, Finn identified the curative attributes of various flora, explaining how the bark of certain trees offered relief from burns and how roots could alleviate muscle fatigue. He spoke with quiet authority, his knowledge expansive and intuitive. Elara found herself captivated by his gentle spirit, his genuine regard for the environment. It stood in sharp contrast to Liam's flamboyant self-assurance and the pack's fixation on power and control. They discovered a small glade awash in sunlight, a welcome haven. Finn took a seat on a fallen tree trunk, and Elara perched beside him, the quiet between them natural and comfortable. "What are your dreams, Elara?" Finn queried, his attention drawn to a butterfly dancing among wildflowers. The inquiry took her by surprise. No one had ever posed that question, not sincerely. They inquired about her obligations, her duties, her training, but never about her dreams. She paused, struggling to articulate the swirling emotions within her. I want to have a positive impact," she eventually confessed, her voice barely audible. "I desire to protect my pack, to safeguard them. But I also yearn for freedom, to shape my own destiny." "And what evokes fear within you?" He pressed softly, pivoting to face her, his expression open and inviting. The truth spilled out of her, unbidden. "The notion of being confined," she admitted. "Restricted by expectations, by duty, by a life dictated to me." She glanced at him, feeling exposed. And the thought of failing, of lacking the strength to safeguard those I cherish." Finn reached out, his hand covering hers in a gesture of comfort. His touch provided a sense of solidity, reassurance. "You possess more strength than you realize, Elara," he affirmed, his voice ringing with sincerity. "Your strength lies not in brute force, but in your compassion, your empathy, your willingness to truly listen." She studied him, really studied him, and discerned a strength she'd previously disregarded. It wasn't the strength of an alpha, the type that roared and demanded obedience. It was a calm fortitude, a resilience honed by adversity, a profound comprehension of the interconnectedness of all things. It was the strength of one who had learned to appreciate beauty and meaning in the smallest things, one who had discovered inner peace despite the world's prejudices. "What of you, Finn?" she asked, her tone gentler. "What do you dream of? What do you fear?" He hesitated, averting his gaze. "I dream of a world where omegas are valued for their unique attributes, not stigmatized for their perceived shortcomings," he murmured. "Where we are recognized as individuals, not as liabilities." He met her eyes, his own filled with quiet sadness. "And I fear I fear that such a dream will never materialize. Elara squeezed his hand, her heart aching for his plight. She was aware of the prejudice he endured, the callous cruelty of those who deemed him inferior. She had been complicit in it herself, her judgment clouded by the pack's ingrained biases. But now, witnessing him bathed in sunlight, feeling the warmth of his touch, she knew she could no longer remain passive. "I vow, Finn," she declared, her voice resolute, "I will dedicate myself to making that dream a reality. I will leverage my position to instigate change, to reveal your true worth." He smiled, a radiant, genuine smile that illuminated his features. "Thank you, Elara," he replied, his voice brimming with gratitude. "That means more to me than words can express." As the sun began its descent, painting the forest floor with long shadows, they started their trek back toward the packlands. The air had grown cooler, and the forest's sounds deepened, the susurrus of leaves whispering secrets meant only for them. Elara walked beside Finn, her heart swirling with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. She understood that her burgeoning feelings for him were fraught with danger, that they defied the pack's customs and the expectations placed on her. Yet, she couldn't ignore the potent connection she felt, the way he truly saw her, the way he understood her essence. She knew that choosing Finn would mean jeopardizing everything: her position, her status, her safety. But as she gazed at him, at the quiet resolve in his eyes, she realized she couldn't turn away. She had been destined to be the Luna, but perhaps, against all odds, she could choose who to give her heart to. An alpha's decree, a palpable tension, hung in the air as Liam mounted the makeshift stage at the heart of the pack's gathering place. All eyes turned to him. An undeniable force radiated from him, the very air thrumming with his alpha command, stiffening the spines of even the most hardened warriors. His gaze swept over the assembled wolves, a possessive heat flickering as it snagged on Elara, who stood a little removed from the others. A sharp, knowing smile played on his lips. "My pack," he proclaimed, his voice amplified by some unseen current that resonated in their very marrow. "The hour is upon us to celebrate our might, our solidarity, our very future." He allowed the significance of his words to settle. "Therefore, I declare a lavish gala, an event unparalleled in these lands, a testament to our pack's preeminence and to my Luna, Elara." The pack erupted in a unified roar, a seismic wave that shook the trees and scattered avian life from the branches. Elara shivered, despite the afternoon's warmth. A lavish gala, a public spectacle, precisely what she wished to avoid. Her stomach clenched, the joy she'd found with Finn now a faint, distant spark. The throng surged forward, buzzing with anticipation over arrangements, music, cuisine, the potential for alliances to be forged amidst the glittering facade. Liam descended, his focus laser-locked on Elara. He took her hand, his grasp firm and claiming. "This night will be etched in memory, my Luna," he murmured, his words a private offering. "A night when the entire territory witnesses your beauty, your strength, and your unwavering loyalty to our pack." Elara managed a smile, but the words tasted like dust. "Of course, Liam," she replied, her voice a mere breath. Later, as twilight bled into night, painting the sky with the first pinpricks of stars, Elara sought out Lyra. She found her in her herb garden, hands stained with soil, her expression serene in the fading light. "Lyra, I need your counsel," Elara began, her voice taut with worry. Lyra straightened, her eyes sharpening with concern as she took in Elara's pallid complexion. "What troubles you, child?" you appear distressed." Elara unburdened herself, recounting Liam's proclamation, the pressure suffocating her, the growing gulf between her duty and her desires. "I dread this ball, Lyra," she confessed, her voice cracking. "It feels false, like I'm being displayed, not celebrated." Lyra listened patiently, her gaze unwavering. When Elara finished, she took her hand, her touch grounding. "Tradition holds sway, Elara," she said gently. "But it is not immutable. You are destined for the role of Luna, but also to be uniquely yourself. Seek the balance, child. Muster the strength to honor both." "But how?" Elara pleaded, tears pricking her eyes. "Liam won't heed me. He views this as a means to solidify his control, to assert his dominance." "Then you must illuminate his understanding," Lyra said firmly. "Show him that power extends beyond brute force, encompassing understanding, compassion. Remind him of the values he professes to hold dear." The following morning, Elara found Liam in his study. The air was thick with the aroma of leather and ink, the walls adorned with maps and trophies. Liam was immersed in reports, a deep furrow etching his brow. "Liam," Elara began, her voice barely a whisper, "may we discuss the Gala?" He glanced up, his expression softening momentarily at the sight of her. "Of course, my Luna. What concerns you?" "I understand the importance of this affair," Elara said, measuring her words. "However, I have some reservations. I believe we can honor our pack without excessive displays of opulence. Perhaps we could emphasize the contributions of every member, not solely the Alpha and Luna. Instead of flexing our dominance, perhaps we could channel those resources into enhancing our lands or aiding those in need." Liam listened in silence, his expression hardening with each passing word. When she concluded, he leaned back, his eyes narrowed. "Elara," he said, his tone devoid of warmth, "I appreciate your insights, but this gala is not about charity or humility. It's about might. It is about reminding everyone, both within and beyond our borders, that we are a force. And it is about showcasing you, my Luna, as the embodiment of that force." "But Liam," Elara protested, her voice rising with desperation, "can't you see? True strength stems from within, from unity, from empathy, not from superficial displays of power." Liam rose, his imposing figure looming over her. "You will be a magnificent Luna, Elara. However, your understanding of leadership is still developing. Trust my judgment on this. The gala will proceed accordingly." He dismissed her with a flick of his wrist. Elara stood there for a beat, her heart leaden. He hadn't listened. He hadn't even attempted comprehension. The chasm between them seemed to deepen with each breath, and the prospect of a life tethered to him felt like a suffocating weight. As she departed the study, defeated and crestfallen, she glimpsed Finn standing at the forest's edge. He averted his gaze, but she knew he was there. A silent, comforting presence in a world that felt increasingly bleak. And in that instant, she realized her battle had only just commenced. The gala was not just a celebration, it was a proving ground. And she would have to find a way to fight for her convictions, regardless of the cost. The wildflower crown, the clearing vibrated with the thrum of unseen wings, a natural orchestra to which Finn's movements flowed with fluid grace. Sunlight, filtered through the canopy, cast an ever-shifting mosaic on the earth as he knelt, his fingertips tracing the curves of wildflower petals. This wasn't mere gathering, it was a careful curation, each blossom selected for its singular shade, form, and spirit. An electric blue cornflower, mirroring the sky after a tempest, nestled against a scarlet poppy, its color a hushed confidence. He wove in sprigs of lavender, their scent a peaceful blessing, and daisies, their purity a foil to the turmoil within him. He labored with quiet intensity, a crease etching his brow as he braided stems, binding them with supple willow strands. Garrick watched from the wood's edge, a tentative smile gracing his features. Usually reserved, almost shrinking, Garrick seemed drawn to Finn's calm strength, finding solace in his kinship with the wild, a balm against the pack's inflexible rules. "It's beautiful," Garrick breathed, his voice a bare tremor. "Who's it for?" Finn glanced up, his eyes, the hue of rain-soaked moss, meeting Garrick's. A faint rose tinted his cheeks. "It's a present," he offered, carefully skirting specifics. He trusted Garrick wouldn't pry the Omega possessed a rare gift of understanding, a perception that transcended spoken language. Garrick nodded, returning his gaze to the garland. "She'll adore it," he predicted with quiet assurance. "You see beauty where others are blind." Finn resumed his work, his fingers dancing with practiced dexterity. He pictured Elara, the sharp planes of her face softened by the delicate blossoms, the steely resolve in her eyes tempered by an underlying fragility. He knew this floral gift was risky, an outward sign of feelings that needed to stay hidden. But he couldn't resist crafting something exquisite for her, an embodiment of the hope germinating within him, despite impossible odds. The sun began its descent, drawing long shadows across the forest floor. Finn gently laid the completed circlet in a moss-lined basket of woven reeds. Stealth was paramount. Liam's scrutiny had intensified as the Gala approached. Every shared glance, every casual exchange was now suspect. Later that night, veiled by a starless sky, Elara found him waiting near the edge of the training grounds, where the heavy scents of pine and damp earth hung thick. Gala preparations were in overdrive, the packhouse a clamorous hive of raised voices and frantic activity. She had stolen away, craving a moment of reprieve, a breath of pure air before assuming her expected role. "Finn," she sighed, her voice barely audible in the stillness. Moonlight, sifting through the trees, bathed her in a silvery luminescence, emphasizing the weariness etched around her eyes. He stepped forward, his pulse hammering against his ribs. He offered the basket, his hand betraying a slight tremor. I made this for you." Confusion knitted Elara's brow as she accepted the basket, her fingers grazing his. The brief contact sparked a jolt of forbidden energy through her, a perilous thrill that both terrified and exhilarated. She lifted the garland, her breath catching in her throat. "Finn," she murmured, her eyes widening in surprise and a glimmer of something more, a reflection of the yearning within his own heart. The wildflowers seemed to radiate in the dimness, their colors impossibly rich. "It's breathtaking," she managed, her voice thick with emotion. Her fingers traced the delicate petals, her touch reverent. "But I can't." He understood her unspoken meaning. She couldn't be seen wearing it. It would be a flagrant act of defiance, a revelation of something doomed to remain concealed. "It's only a symbol," he replied, his voice quiet but insistent. "A reminder of what you represent, of the hope you ignite." Her gaze locked with his, searching his soul. She recognized the unshakable conviction in his eyes, the unwavering faith in her, the quiet fortitude that had drawn her to him in the first place. The garland was more than just blooms. It was a distillation of their intertwined dreams, their clandestine connection, their enduring hope for a brighter future. Liam would be incandescent, she admitted, her voice edged with both fear and defiance. I know, Finn acknowledged softly. But it's yours. The choice is yours. She hesitated, her fingers gripping the garland tightly. The weight of her obligations, the expectations of her pack, the looming threat of Liam's fury all pressed upon her, threatening to suffocate her. But then she looked at Finn, at the burning faith mirrored in his gaze, and a spark of rebellion kindled within her. "Help me," she whispered, barely audible. Finn moved closer, his fingertips gently lifting a strand of her hair. He carefully placed the crown upon her head, the delicate blossoms framing her face like an ethereal halo. The perfume of wildflowers filled the air, a sweet, intoxicating fragrance that masked the sharper sense of fear and desire. Elara looked up at him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. At that instant, embraced by the silent trees and the watchful stars, she felt a surge of strength, a rekindled resolve to fight for her beliefs, regardless of the consequences. The wildflower crown, a symbol of their forbidden bond and unwavering hope, served as a reminder that even in the deepest shadows, beauty could still take root. She reached out, her fingers gently brushing his cheek. "Thank you, Finn," she whispered, "for truly seeing me." He closed his eyes briefly, savoring the fleeting touch. "Always," he answered, his voice thick with suppressed emotion. But their fragile peace was shattered by the sound of approaching footsteps. Liam's voice, sharp and imperious, sliced through the night air. "Elara, where are you?" Panic flared in Elara's eyes. She swiftly removed the crown, pressing it back into Finn's hands. "Go," she urged, her voice trembling. "Hide it." Finn hesitated, his gaze lingering on her face. He longed to defend her, to shield her from Liam's rage. But he knew the most effective course was to vanish into the shadows, allowing her to confront her fate. He turned and fled, dissolving into the darkness, the wildflower crown clutched tightly in his hand. Elara drew a deep breath, bracing herself for the impending confrontation. She squared her shoulders, forcing a smile onto her face. She was the Luna of the Silverstream pack, and she would fulfill her duty. Yet beneath the surface, veiled by layers of tradition and duty, the wildflower crown would serve as a constant reminder of the love blossoming in secrecy, and the hope that one day she might be free to forge her own path. Gilded cage the gown draped over Elara felt like solidified moonlight, surprisingly weightless considering the richness of the silk and the elaborate silver tracery mimicking the moonlit forest floor. A masterpiece tailored to present her as Liam's Luna, his chosen mate, his trophy. But the mirror showed not a Luna, a beacon of strength and poise, but a woman caged in finery. The silver seemed to taunt her, emphasizing the emptiness in her gaze, the artificiality of her smile. A rap at the door echoed in the vast suite. Liam. He wouldn't be kept waiting. She inhaled sharply, smoothing imaginary creases from the dress, a futile gesture to reclaim control. Beneath the surface of her skin, she felt the faint echo of Finn's wildflower wreath, a secret act of defiance against the constricting traditions about to engulf her. "Enter," she said, her tone masking the turmoil within. Liam dominated the doorway, a figure embodying raw power and sculpted grace. His dark suit, impeccably cut, accentuated his broad frame and athletic build. The sharpness usually present in his eyes softened as he gazed upon her, replaced by something resembling authentic admiration, the glimpse of the man she once thought she knew, or perhaps desperately wanted to believe, existed. "You are stunning," he murmured, his voice a resonant undertone that vibrated through the air. Elara returned a practiced smile. "Thank you, Liam." He offered his arm, and she placed her hand gingerly in the crook of his elbow. His grip was firm, possessive, a silent decree of their connection, their obligation. As they processed through the lavish corridors towards the ballroom, Elara felt a growing sense of dissociation, like an actress reciting lines in a play she didn't write. Inside, the ballroom surged with a symphony of sights, sounds, and aromas. Pack members, adorned in their most extravagant attire, swirled beneath the shimmering pendants. A palpable tension mingled with excited murmurs, all directed at the Alpha and his Luna. Perfume mingled with the acrid scent of wolfsbane, a harsh reminder of the pack's feral essence, a nature that felt increasingly foreign to Elara. As Liam led her into the throng, the volume escalated. Heads pivoted, whispers subsided, and every eye fixed on them. Elara willed herself to maintain a composed facade, projecting the strength and assurance expected of her role. Inwardly, she felt like a delicate songbird caught in a tempest. "Luna Elara, you look absolutely divine." Mrs. Hawthorne, a prominent elder known for her sharp tongue, gushed as she approached, her diamond necklace scattering light. "Thank you, Mrs. Hawthorne," Elara responded, carefully controlling her inflection. Liam offered a curt nod, his attention already sweeping the room, assessing and calculating. Always vigilant, always the alpha, even amidst supposed revelry. The greetings and compliments continued, a relentless deluge of empty pleasantries that wore away at Elara's resolve. Each touch, each word, felt like another shackle, binding her tighter to the pack's expectations. She was a symbol, an ornament, a responsibility. She was not Elara. A young beta, fresh from training, stammered an admiring comment about her gown, his eyes wide with awe, mingled with something else, something that sparked a memory of Finn's unreserved, genuine admiration. A wave of longing surged through her, quickly followed by a stinging pang of guilt. Liam, always observant, tightened his hold on her arm, his eyes narrowing imperceptibly. "She has impeccable taste," he stated, his tone edged with possessiveness that instantly silenced the young beta. The beta bowed and retreated hastily, leaving Elara feeling breathless. She craved air, space, an escape from the suffocating weight of their expectations. Liam guided her toward the dance floor, where a waltz was commencing. The music, a sweeping melody that should have ignited joy, only heightened her feelings of isolation. As she moved with Liam, her body responding to his practiced lead, her mind drifted, replaying the image of Finn crafting the wildflower crown. The ephemeral beauty of those wildflowers, a symbol of hope and rebellion, stood in stark contrast to the manufactured grandeur of the ballroom. "You seem preoccupied," Liam observed, his breath ghosting against her ear. "Just overwhelmed," Elara replied, hoping her voice wouldn't betray her. "This is your night, Elara. Relish it," he said, his words a directive cloaked as an invitation. But how could she revel when her heart yearned for another? How could she celebrate a tradition that felt like imprisonment? How could she feign being the perfect Luna when she yearned to dismantle the very foundations of their world? As the waltz concluded and applause echoed, a wave of nausea crested within Elara. The lights seemed too garish, the music too deafening, the faces too scrutinizing. She faltered slightly, and Liam's grip intensified, preventing her stumble. "Are you unwell?" he inquired, concern coloring his tone, yet his eyes betrayed a flicker of suspicion. "I need air," Elara gasped, barely audible. Without waiting for his reply, she broke free from him and fled, carving a path through the throng toward the French doors leading to the terrace. She had to escape, if only momentarily, the gilded cage threatening to suffocate her. She didn't know where she was going, or what she would do, but she knew she couldn't endure another second. Shadows of longing, the waltz felt like confinement gilded. Liam's embrace was tight, bordering on bruising, his smile a calculated affectation. The ballroom dazzled, a whirling exhibition of gems and gowns. But the music, usually a joyous current, sounded like a somber now, each note a death blow to her dwindling spirit. She moved in sync with Liam, her body a trained puppet, but her thoughts strayed, drawn toward an unnameable desire, a forbidden longing. "Enjoying the revelry, Luna?" Liam's voice, a resonant murmur, brushed against her ear. Elara summoned a smile. "Immensely, Liam. Everything is flawless." The word left a bitter aftertaste. A dry chuckle escaped him, devoid of genuine amusement. "Flawless because I'm your partner, naturally." She offered no reply, unable to voice another falsehood. The silence deepened, thick and strained, punctuated only by the music's pulse and the whisper of silk. Liam's grip intensified, his fingers pressing into her flesh. She recoiled inwardly, a subtle flinch he seemed to miss, consumed by the performance of Alpha and Luna perfection. Her gaze wandered, searching for solace from the suffocating charade. She surveyed the throng, a blur of faces, each one indistinct and unreadable. Then she noticed him. Finn. He remained in the penumbra near the sweeping staircase, partially obscured by a marble column. He wasn't adorned in the opulent attire of the others. Instead, he wore understated dark clothes that blended with the gloom. He shouldn't be present, not amidst this assemblage of alphas and betas, not in this garish display of authority. Omegas were rarely seen at such affairs, relegated to mere support roles, their presence deemed superfluous. Yet, he stood there, a silent sentinel, a glitch in the system. Their eyes connected. The universe narrowed, the music receding to a faint drone. It was an encounter, there and instantaneous, a spark igniting across the packed hall, disregarding social boundaries and societal expectations. His eyes, generally cast downward, burned with a mirroring intensity. She detected a query, an unspoken entreaty. "Are you unharmed?" And something profoundly deeper. "Do you experience this as well?" Her breath caught. Liam's hand felt like an oppressive weight, hindering her. The ballroom's air seemed to congeal, stifling her with its extravagance and deceit. Finn didn't offer a smile. His visage was earnest, almost melancholic. He understood, she divined. He grasped the extent of her entrapment, the depth of her craving for more. He saw past the facade, beyond the Luna's finery and the Alpha's possessive arm. He saw her essence. The moment stretched, a timeless space suspended in a single regard. Then, a woman in a shimmering dress inadvertently collided with Finn, severing the connection. He retreated, fading further into obscurity. When Elara glanced again, he had vanished. The music surged, drawing her back into the waltz, back into Liam's snare. But everything had been irrevocably altered. The gilded cage felt even more constricting, the bars chafing her. She could still sense Finn's regard, an ethereal caress that kindled a fire within. Liam spoke, his voice intruding on her reverie. "You appear preoccupied, Elara. Is something amiss? She compelled herself to focus on him, on the alpha she was obligated to cherish, the partner she was destined to remain with. Merely fatigued, Liam. It has been a lengthy day. He flashed a smile, a predatory glint in his gaze. Then perhaps an early retreat is in order. I'm certain I can discover methods to alleviate your weariness. His words sent a chill cascading down her spine, devoid of any pleasure. It was an unsettling sensation, a grim reminder of the obligations imposed upon her, the duties she was sworn to uphold. She summoned a weak smile. Perhaps anon, Liam. I wouldn't wish to disappoint our cherished guests. The dance persisted, but Elara was no longer truly present. She was lost in the umbra, fixated on Finn's features, clinging to the recollection of their fleeting bond. The yearning was a stinging ache in her heart, an incessant reminder of her deprivations, of the path unavailable to her. But something had stirred within her, a flicker of defiance, a bud of faith. If Finn, an Omega, could risk his presence here, could dare to gaze at her with such profound emotion, then perhaps she, the Luna, could dare to crave something greater. Perhaps she could dare to shatter free. As the music waned and the dance concluded, Elara grasped one certainty. She could no longer sustain the ruse. The deception had crumbled. She had witnessed the truth in Finn's gaze, and it could never be unseen. The shadows of longing had unveiled a passage, a precarious and prohibited path, yet one she was now resolved to pursue. The customs of their pack, the demands of her position, the coldness of her alpha, none of it held sway any longer. Her heart had made its determination, and she would not disregard it. Challenge at the Stoneclaw, the carefully crafted ambiance of roses and aged whiskey, Liam's signature, was shattered by a primal stench, raw and invasive. A guttural growl, a sound ripped from the throat of a beast, sliced through the genteel murmur of the Stoneclaw pack at their annual Alpha's Ball. Every gaze snapped towards the grand entrance as Kale, a colossal beta from Shadow Moon, appeared, flanked by a dozen of his most lethal warriors. Liam's fingers tightened on Elara's waist, a possessive claim that left her flesh aching even beneath layers of silk. He drew himself up, jaw clenched, and moved forward, drawing Elara with him. "Kale," he greeted, a dangerous silkiness coating his words. What an unforeseen pleasure! Kale's lip curled in a sneer. Younger, perhaps, than Liam, but his eyes held a primordial, hungry light. "Pleasure is far from it, Liam. I'm here to issue a challenge." A wave of disquiet pulsed through the ballroom. Challenges were brutish affairs, a blemish on the carefully polished facade of pack unity. A glacial dread trickled down Elara's spine. This wasn't a mere social misstep, Ka. It was a calculated strike. A challenge? Liam echoed, the edge of his control fraying, a flicker of ire igniting his gaze. On what justification? On the justification that you are infirm. Kale spat, his gaze raking over the gathered werewolves. You pamper your omegas, revel in gaudy displays, and have grown complacent. Stoneclaw needs a leader who embodies strength, not indulgence. A collective gasp swept through the room. To publicly impugn an alpha's authority was treason, punishable by banishment, or worse. Elara's pulse hammered against her ribs. Liam possessed undeniable power, yet Kale was driven by a ravenous ambition that verged on mania. The last threads of Liam's restraint unraveled. He released Elara and stalked toward Kale, his eyes blazing with incandescent rage. "You dare trespass on my territory, denigrate my pack, and dispute my right. You will answer for this, Kale. Answer. Answer?" Kale's laugh rasped like gravel. "I'm banking on it. With a flick of his wrist, chaos exploded. The Shadow Moon warriors surged forward, claws extended like razors, eyes burning with feral intensity. The meticulously arranged tables toppled, scattering delicacies and shattering crystal. Shrieks tore through the air as pack members scrambled for cover. Elara was buffeted, stumbling backward as the throng surged around her. She glimpsed Liam, locked in a frenzied duel with Kale, their bodies a whirlwind of muscle and savage grace. The air buzzed with unleashed power, thick with the metallic tang of blood and the sharp scent of adrenaline. Caught off guard, the Stoneclaw warriors struggled to retaliate. A jolt of pain shot through Elara's arm as someone shoved past. She cried out, cradling her throbbing limb, her vision swimming with terror. She needed to escape, find sanctuary. The ballroom was a vortex of violence, a chaotic whirlwind of fangs and claws. Near the edge she saw Finn, his eyes wide with stark terror, trying to shield a small cluster of younger Omegas behind an overturned table. He looked so exposed, utterly defenseless. A surge of protectiveness washed over Elara, eclipsing her own fear. Ignoring the pandemonium, she fought her way towards Finn, dodging flying debris and snarling figures. Reaching him, she grabbed his arm, pulling him close. "Finn, we have to get out of here," she yelled above the din. Finn stared at her, disbelief etched on his face. "Elara? You shouldn't be here. You're the Luna. You need to be safe. Safety is the least of my concerns right now," Elara retorted, her voice resolute. "Come on, let's go." She propelled him toward a side exit, the small group of Omegas trailing behind. They moved with haste, keeping low, evading the worst of the skirmishes. As they neared the exit, a Shadow Moon warrior lunged, claws unsheathed. Elara shoved Finn and the Omegas behind her, placing herself as a shield, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She had never fought, never considered violence, but she would do anything to safeguard Finn, anything to ensure his survival. The warrior snarled, eyes locked on Elara. He lunged again, and she braced for the blow. But before he could reach her, a figure interposed himself, blocking the assault. It was Liam. His face was smeared with blood, his clothes ripped and torn, but his eyes burned with fierce, uncompromising protection. He roared, a primal sound that resonated through the very foundations of the building, and hurled himself at the warrior with a ferocity that astonished even Elara. She seized the opportunity to shepherd Finn and the Omegas from the ballroom into the relative haven of the gardens. The sounds of battle still thundered behind them, but they were clear of immediate danger. Huddled together, gasping for air, Elara glanced back at the ballroom, her heart a complex knot of fear and fury. Stoneclaw was besieged, their traditions desecrated, their very existence threatened. And she, the Luna, was ensnared in the middle, torn between obligation and yearning, between the Alpha she was sworn to and the Omega she couldn't deny. The fragrance of roses and whiskey was now utterly drowned by the sharp, coppery taste of blood and the biting reek of fear. The ball, once a symbol of Stoneclaw's dominion, had devolved into a grisly battleground. And Elara knew, with bone-deep certainty, that nothing would ever be the same. Defiance and courage, Liam's roar, tore through the smoke-choked air of Stoneclaw's courtyard. The transformation contorted him, a symphony of cracking bones and rending muscle as he grew into a wolf of immense size, dwarfing Halbert Kale. He met the initial Shadow Moon surge with raw, desperate fury. More than leadership hung in the balance. Stoneclaw's very existence, Elara's safety, everything he cherished was at stake. The conflict erupted, a swirling vortex of tooth and claw illuminated by the torch's dance. Encircled by his shadow moon horde, Kale relentlessly pressed his advantage. Though physically superior, Liam was fast being overwhelmed. He sidestepped a snapping maw, fangs grazing his fur, and countered with a vicious bite to the attacker's side, sending it howling back into the fray. A spin of his powerful tail knocked another warrior sprawling before he tore into the next assailant. Snarls and the sickening crunch of impacts filled the night. At the edge of the pandemonium, Elara felt her heart hammer against her ribs. She'd drawn the Omegas back, sheltering them behind the ruined pack hall. Every block, every strike, every near-miss Liam weathered resonated within her. She saw Kale's glancing blow to his leg, and a guttural growl vibrated in her own chest. Custom dictated she remain aloof, Aluna's purpose to bolster her alpha, not join the melee. But tradition felt like a suffocating weight tonight. Liam fought with troptanimal intensity. He became a maelstrom of sinew and savagery, yet the Shadow Moon pack was relentless. They moved with unnerving coordination, a unified hunting force. Briefly breaking free, he shook off the clinging wolves, and then he saw Kale. Observing from a distance, a cruel smirk played on his lips. He was allowing his warriors to weaken Liam, to drain him before delivering the killing stroke. A Shadow Moon warrior pounced, claws extended for Liam's exposed flank. Already favoring his injured leg, Liam was too sluggish to evade. He steeled himself, a grim resignation washing over him. Then a streak of silver, a high, keening cry that sliced through the den. Elara. With unforeseen speed, she shoved the Shadow Moon warrior aside, throwing herself before Liam. The warrior, momentarily bewildered, stumbled. Elara, breathing hard, her eyes blazing defiance, turned to face the advancing Shadow Moon pack, unshifted, untransformed. A woman, Aluna, daring to confront a pack of werewolves. A collective intake of breath swept the courtyard. Such an act was unheard of. Aluna never engaged. It was beyond conception. Liam gaped, his expression a blend of shock and disbelief. Elara, get back. No. Fear laced his roar. Ignoring him, her gaze locked on Kale. This ends now, her voice rang out, clear and strong amidst the chaos. This pack will not be destroyed by your ambition. Kale chuckled, a dark, rumbling sound. Look at you, Luna. So courageous, so foolish. You think you can stop me? A mere human? I am Luna of Stoneclaw, she retorted, chin raised, and I will defend my pack. A hulking brute with scarred fur snarled, stepping forward. Out of the way, woman. You don't belong here. Elara did not waver. She knew the odds, knew the risks, but she couldn't stand idly by and watch Liam die. She couldn't let Stoneclaw crumble. I will not yield, she declared, her voice unwavering. The warrior lunged, claws bared. Liam roared again, struggling to reach her. But his strength was depleted. He was too far. Elara closed her eyes for a fleeting instant, bracing. But the blow never landed. A different growl, low and visceral, vibrated through the air. A new presence solidified beside her. Strong, warm, undeniably Omega. Finn. He stood shoulder to shoulder with Elara, eyes burning with an unfamiliar intensity. He too remained human, yet a potent energy radiated from him, an untamed force that pulsed through the very atmosphere. The Shadow Moon warrior faltered, sensing the shift, the danger. You will not harm her, Finn growled, a menacing rumble unlike anything Elara had ever heard from him, resonant with a primal strength she never suspected he possessed. Cale's eyes narrowed, his gaze shifting from Elara to Finn. A flicker of something akin to fear crossed his features. "What is this?" he hissed. "An Omega? Defying me? Impossible." Finn ignored him, locked on the Shadow Moon warriors. He advanced, and the wolves instinctively recoiled. The air crackled with unspoken power, a silent challenge hanging thick in the courtyard. Elara stared at Finn, her heart a frantic bird in her chest. This was not the quiet, self-effacing Omega she knew. This was something else entirely. Something more. The Shadow Moon warriors, hesitant and unnerved, looked to Cale for direction. He remained mute, his face a storm of fury and disbelief. The battle, for the moment, was suspended, teetering on a precarious edge. Elara and Finn stood together, a Luna and an Omega, flouting tradition, shattering expectations, defying the bedrock of their world. Liam, still weakened, watched them, his mind reeling. He didn't comprehend the shift, the power he was witnessing. But one thing was clear. Elara, his Luna, had irrevocably altered everything. The defiance, the courage in her actions, had cracked the rigid structure of their pack, their world. And, in that moment, he knew nothing could ever revert. Confusion warred with the dawn of understanding in his eyes, and perhaps a grudging respect. Omega's strength Finn remained rooted to the spot, a silent observer. Elara, a tempest of controlled fury, parried the Shadow Moon warriors' assault, the flat clang of their weapons punctuating the tense quiet. Her movements, honed and lethal, betrayed a growing exhaustion. A subtle wavering in her stance spoke volumes. He knew, with a cold certainty that gripped his gut, her endurance was failing. Deeper within the chaotic melee, Liam, still cloaked in his wolf form, fought with savage desperation, a blur of fang and claw against overwhelming numbers. The air was thick, cloying with the sharp reek of fear and damp fur. He shouldn't even consider it. Every fiber of his being, every ingrained precept, screamed for him to remain unseen, unheard. Omegas did not engage in combat. They served. They obeyed. But the sight of Elara, sweat-slicking strands of dark hair to her face as she fended off another brutal attack, overrode his conditioning. The ironclad grip of tradition felt as if it was beginning to loosen. He edged forward, a hesitant step that felt monumental. The earth felt strangely fluid beneath him. Doubt, an insidious whisper, chipped away at his resolve. What could he possibly achieve? An Omega, smaller, weaker, versed only in the gentle arts of healing and diplomacy, not warfare. Yet, the sheer dread that threatened to suffocate him at the prospect of Elara's defeat propelled him onward. A Shadow Moon thug, radiating malice and decay, lunged at Elara, a rusted axe arcing towards her unguarded side. Finn reacted without thought, without planning. Adrenaline surged, and he hurled himself into the path of the descending weapon, a frail shield against imminent harm. He squeezed his eyes shut, awaiting the inevitable blow. But it never landed. Instead, a torrent of energy, raw and untamed, exploded from within him. It wasn't the delicate, soothing energy he channeled to knit bone or soothe troubled minds. This was something entirely different, something primal and fierce. It roared through him, incinerating the fear and replacing it with a strange, exhilarating potency. He opened his eyes, startled. The Shadow Moon warrior stood frozen, the axe suspended scant inches from Finn's face. An invisible force emanated from him, rippling like summer heat on the horizon. The warrior's eyes bulged, flecks of spittle sprang as he struggled to speak. Finn didn't hesitate. He struck out. No gentle touch this time, but with a force that sent the warrior reeling backwards, slamming into a tangle of fallen branches. The impact splintered the wood. Elara gaped at him, her expression a study in shock and disbelief. "Finn?" she breathed, her voice a bare thread against the din. He had no chance to reply. Another Shadow Moon combatant, a mountainous figure with eyes like chips of glacial ice, charged toward him. Finn steeled himself, summoning the volatile energy coursing through his veins. This time, he met the assault head-on. He moved with an agility he hadn't known he possessed, evading the warrior's clumsy swipe and delivering a blow of his own. It wasn't a practiced maneuver, honed through rigorous training. It was raw, unadulterated power, channeled through his fist and directed at the warrior's jaw. The sickening crack of bone resonated through the clearing. The warrior collapsed, unconscious, before he even hit the forest floor. A collective gasp swept through the ranks of the Stoneclaw pack. Fighting faltered, their attention arrested. All eyes pivoted to Finn, the quiet, unassuming Omega, standing defiant amidst the pandemonium, radiating an aura of strength they'd never suspected. Liam, still in his wolf guise, broke off his attack, his amber eyes narrowed in bewilderment. He cocked his head, testing the air, attempting to decipher the unfamiliar scent emanating from Finn. Omega, undeniably, but something else too. Something feral, untamed. Even the Shadow Moon warriors seemed momentarily thrown, their initial aggression blunted by this unexpected development. A low murmur spread through their ranks, hushed whispers of disbelief and apprehension. Elara, shaking off her astonishment, closed the distance, placing a hand on Finn's arm. "Finn, what? What's happening?" she queried, her voice laced with wonder. He met her gaze, his eyes mirroring the tumultuous energy swirling within him. I don't know," he confessed, his voice rough. "But I won't let them hurt you." And with that declaration, he plunged back into the fray, an unexpected whirlwind of power. He moved with a grace and ferocity that defied his Omega designation, deflecting blows, disarming foes, shielding Elara with unwavering determination. The battle's momentum began to shift. Bolstered by Finn's unforeseen strength, the Stoneclaw warriors fought with renewed zeal, their fear supplanted by a surge of hope. The Shadow Moon warriors, disoriented and demoralized, began to falter, their strikes growing ragged, their resolve crumbling. Liam, regaining his focus, unleashed a deafening howl, rallying his pack. He surged back into the conflict, his movements now propelled by a volatile mixture of fury and admiration. He fought alongside Finn, the Alpha and the Omega, a united front against the encroaching darkness. The battle raged on, but the tide had turned. The Stoneclaw pack, inspired by Finn's courage and fueled by his unexpected power, pushed back against the Shadow Moon invaders, forcing them deeper and deeper into the woods. Finally, with a frustrated cry, the surviving Shadow Moon warriors retreated, melting back into the shadows from which they had emerged, leaving behind a scattered trail of wounded and dead. The Stoneclaw pack stood victorious, but the victory felt different, tinged by the unsettling revelation of Finn's hidden capabilities. The established order had been irrevocably shattered, the rigid hierarchy of Alpha and Omega undermined. Everything had been irrevocably altered. Elara regarded Finn, her heart a complex knot of gratitude, awe, and burgeoning hope. He had defied expectations, flouted convention, and unleashed a power that no one, least of all himself, had ever imagined. And in doing so, He had not only saved her life, but had also unlocked the potential for a future she'd never dared to contemplate. A future where omegas were not inherently subservient, where strength was not solely dictated by rank, and where love could transcend the confines of tradition. The battle had been won, but the true war, the fight for their future, had only just begun. The unspoken truth the air thronged with fading power. Finn, still unsteady, stood tall, an unearthly gleam burning in his eyes. Elara, her pulse a frantic drum against her ribs, was momentarily bereft of words, a strange blend of veneration and dread seizing her. Liam, staggering up from a crushing blow, scanned between Elara and Finn, bewilderment battling suspicion in his expression. The Shadow Moon warriors, momentarily halted by Finn's sudden potency, reformed their lines, guttural growls resonating across the blighted clearing. Their chieftain, a massive figure with eyes like polished coal, barked an order, and they charged once more, a tide of muscle and aggression. Yet, fortune had shifted. Elara, surging with adrenaline and a fierce need to safeguard Finn, met their assault head-on, her silvered claws glinting. Liam, his initial shock giving way to grim resolve, fought with renewed savagery, his alpha strength amplified by sheer, untamed wrath. And Finn, though visibly shaken, remained steadfast, a low thrum vibrating around him, a warning to trespassers. They fought in concert, a trio united by a common cause: the defense of their pack, their territory, their heritage. Elara flowed with newfound grace and strength, threading between the Shadow Moon warriors, her strikes precise and lethal. Liam, a rampaging force of nature, carved a path through their ranks, his roars shaking the very earth. And Finn, while abstaining from direct confrontation, served as a bulwark, his energy field deflecting attacks and disrupting the Shadow Moon's coordination. A particularly burly warrior lunged for Elara, claws extended, aiming for her jugular. She dodged, narrowly escaping the strike, but lost purchase on the uneven ground. Before she could regain her balance, the warrior raised his claws once more, poised to deliver the killing blow. A wave of raw energy detonated against the warrior, flinging him back several feet like a discarded doll. Finn stood firm, his eyes blazing with an intensity that masked his gentle nature. Elara scrambled back to her feet, her heart threatening to burst from her chest. "Finn," she whispered, her voice tinged with disbelief and gratitude. He didn't reply, his focus riveted on the opposition. Liam, recognizing the opening, took the offensive, barreling forward and tackling the dazed warrior. The conflict raged, yet the Shadow Moon warriors were patently losing ground. Their initial zeal had dissipated, replaced by a growing disquiet. They faced not only an Alpha and a Luna, but something more, something unforeseen, something that defied their rigidly defined social structure. At last, with a roar of vexation, the Shadow Moon leader signaled a withdrawal. The surviving warriors, bruised and bloodied, turned tail and vanished into the forest's shadows, abandoning their fallen brethren. Silence fell upon the clearing, punctuated only by the ragged breaths of the victors. Elara, Liam, and Finn stood their ground, their bodies aching, their clothes shredded, but their spirits unbroken. Liam surveyed the scene, his gaze lingering on the retreating Shadow Moon warriors. He then slowly, deliberately, turned his attention to Elara and Finn. He watched as Elara hurried to Finn's side, her hands fluttering around him, assessing for injuries. He noticed the worry etched onto her face, the tenderness reflected in her eyes. And he also discerned the way Finn regarded her, a mixture of devotion and apprehension, a longing mirroring her own. There was an unspoken dialogue between them, a silent language uniquely understood by them. A language that whispered of shared hurt, of clandestine yearnings, of a love audacious enough to challenge the constraints of their society. Liam felt a sharp sting of envy, a bitter taste coating his palate. The truth, which he had been desperately suppressing, slammed into him with the force of a rogue wave. He had witnessed it in their surreptitious glances, in their hushed exchanges, in their instinctive drawing towards one another. Yet he had refused to acknowledge it, clinging to the illusion of power, to the comfort of custom. Now, standing amidst the battle's wreckage, with the evidence of their connection starkly revealed before him, he could no longer deny it. Elara, his Luna, his designated mate, was enamored with Finn, an Omega. The realization struck him hard, shaking him to his very foundation. It was a defection, a transgression of everything he held sacred. And yet, as he observed Elara's face, the genuine concern shining in her eyes, he couldn't summon anger, only a profound, gnawing sadness. He had always recognized that Elara was exceptional, that she possessed a spirit too vibrant to be confined by the stringent rules of their world. He had admired her fortitude, her empathy, her unwavering dedication to fairness. But he had also attempted to mold her, to force her into the mold of the perfect Luna, to stifle the very attributes that set her apart. And in doing so, he had alienated her. He had fostered a void in their bond, a space that Finn had filled with his quiet kindness, his steadfast support, his unreserved affection. "Are you all right, Finn?" Elara inquired, her voice soft and soothing. Finn nodded, his eyes still locked on hers. I don't understand what happened," he stammered. I couldn't let them hurt you." "You were incredible," Elara said, her voice resonating with awe. "You saved us." Liam watched them, his heart throbbing with a complex mixture of anguish and comprehension. He understood that he couldn't compel Elara to reciprocate his love. He couldn't dismiss the bond that linked her and Finn. And he couldn't disregard the mounting discontent within the pack, the yearning for a more equitable and just society. He drew a deep breath, attempting to marshal his thoughts. He knew he faced a decision, one that would shape the destiny of his pack and perhaps even the future of their world. He could cleave to tradition, to the antiquated beliefs that had defined their lives for generations. He could attempt to force Elara back into her role as Luna, to suppress Finn's newfound power, to maintain the established order. Or he could embrace transformation, to question the status quo, to cultivate a society where everyone, irrespective of their rank, was treated with respect and dignity. He could acknowledge the love that thrived between Elara and Finn, and discover a way to weave it into the very fabric of their pack. The choice rested with him, and the consequences, whatever they might be, would be his to endure. He looked at Elara, at Finn, at the devastation that encompassed them. The unspoken truth hung heavily in the air, both a challenge and an opportunity. The Alpha would decide. Confrontations and confessions, a metallic tang, lingering ozone, testified to Finn's startling outburst. Liam discovered Elara on the balcony, the emerald training grounds a tranquil canvas against his inner storm. He paused, observing her stray ebony tresses danced across her cheek, etching it with fleeting shadows. Their history stretched back to childhood, a tapestry woven with pack obligations and shared expectations. Yet, a gulf seemed to have opened between them, vast and unbridgeable. Deliberately, he crossed the flagstones. "Elara," he rumbled, the wind threatening to steal his words. She pivoted, her green gaze meeting his, now shadowed by a wariness he'd never witnessed before, a subtle shield that tightened his chest. "Liam." He halted several feet away, the space a chasm. "We must talk." "I know." Her response, terse and weighted, hung in the air. He inhaled deeply, the brisk air offering scant relief from his inner turmoil. "What transpired with Finn?" He floundered for the correct phrasing, torn between alpha duty and a lover's pain. "It was unexpected, to say the least." "He defended me," Elara declared, her tone resolute. "Defended you?" Liam countered, a sharp edge infiltrating his voice. "Against warriors he should have been unable to challenge? From a peril that arose because you deliberately placed yourself in harm's way?" Her jaw hardened. "I chose to protect our pack. Finn aided me. And what else did he do, Elara?" Liam closed the gap, his voice a hushed threat. "What else is he to you?" She recoiled slightly, a momentary glimpse of vulnerability before she composed herself. "He's a pack member. His well-being concerns me." Liam's scoff was a harsh rasp in the stillness. "Don't insult me. I witnessed the look in your eyes, Elara, the regard you gave him. It wasn't the Luna's concern for a subordinate." Silence met his accusation, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon. Her shoulders were rigid, her breathing shallow and rapid. The truth, unspoken, pulsed between them. "Tell me," Liam demanded. The alpha asserting dominance. "Confess what he is to you." Elara turned to face him completely, her eyes reflecting a pain that echoed his own. "He possesses everything I had hoped to find in you, Liam." The confession landed like a physical blow, robbing him of breath. He stumbled backward, reeling from the impact. "What are you implying?" "I'm confessing that I love him," she breathed, the quiet words laden with unspoken longing. "I love Finn." His perceptions skewed, the world tilting on its axis. The training fields, the pack territory, even the very bedrock of his existence, dissolved into a dizzying blur. He had sensed, in the deepest recesses of his heart, that their union rested upon duty and tradition, lacking the incandescent passion he'd observed between others. Yet he'd nurtured the naive hope that love might still blossom, that their shared responsibilities would ignite into something deeper. She was delivering the shattering revelation that her heart belonged to another, to a subordinate, someone entirely forbidden. "That's impossible," he choked, his voice a rasp. "You are my Luna. You are bound to me. This cannot be occurring." "It is occurring, Liam," Elara responded softly, reaching for him. He recoiled from her touch. "How could you?" he asked, his voice fractured by anguish. "How could you betray me in this way? Betray our pack? I didn't. Choose this," she pleaded, her eyes glistening with suppressed tears. "It simply happened. I fought it, Liam. Truly I did. But I cannot deny my feelings." He averted his gaze, unable to endure the sight of her torment, of his own reflection mirrored in her eyes. He raked a hand through his hair, his thoughts spiraling, struggling to comprehend the ramifications of her declaration. This transcended mere personal unhappiness. It threatened the pack's very future. The Alpha and Luna were the linchpins of their society, their bond symbolizing strength and stability. If that bond fractured, what would become of them? "What do you expect me to do, Elara?" he asked, his voice dripping with bitterness. "To simply ignore it? Pretend I didn't hear your admission? Sanction this forbidden passion?" "I don't know," she confessed, her voice barely audible. I simply needed you to learn the truth. He turned back, his eyes searching hers for any hint of remorse, any desire to retract her words. But he saw only suffering and a quiet resolve. She had made her decision. Do you grasp the stakes? He questioned, his voice heavy with foreboding. Our pack, our traditions, everything we've built together. I do, she stated, lifting her chin in defiance. But I can no longer live a fabrication, Liam. I can no longer feign being someone I'm not. He gazed at her, the woman he'd known his entire life, and acknowledged that he didn't know her at all. The Luna he had imagined, the devoted wife, the steadfast partner, was nothing more than a phantom. The real Elara stood before him, a woman prepared to defy convention, to jeopardize everything for the sake of her heart. I require time, he stated finally, his voice devoid of all emotion. I need time to process this, to determine what this means for us, for the pack. He turned and departed, leaving her alone on the balcony, the wind swirling around her like a lament. He had no destination in mind, no plan of action. All he knew was that his world had crumbled, and he lacked the means to piece it back together. The burden of leadership weighed heavily upon him, stifling and oppressive. He was Alpha, sworn to safeguard his pack, to uphold their traditions. But how could he defend them from a threat that festered within, from the very core of his marriage? And more importantly, could he bring himself to condemn the woman he had cherished for so long, even if it meant salvaging everything he held sacred? The answer, he feared, was one he wasn't prepared to confront. Banished the hush in the great hall, pressed down like a shroud, heavier than the familiar scent of resin and loam ingrained in the ancient stone. Every gaze, an array of gold and umber, locked on Liam. He remained stiff as timber on the dais, the Alpha's brand on his Adam's apple flickering with suppressed energy. Beside him, Elara stood as if hewn from granite, a statue of sorrow and unyielding spirit. Her own mark pulsed in painful counterpoint to his, a relentless reminder of her publicly severed bond. Finn, Liam managed, his voice, usually a resonant declaration, reduced to a rough-edged murmur. He scanned the assembled pack, then fixed his gaze on the scuffed floorboards, avoiding Elara. Finn has transgressed against our most hallowed laws. He has overstepped his place. The precise nature of the offense remained unspoken, the words of infidelity and forbidden longing scorching his throat. The elders have deliberated. The sentence Exile. A wave of shocked breaths swept the hall. Exile was a drawn-out execution, a descent into madness and starvation in the unforgiving wilds, a prize for scavenging wolves. This harsh judgment was typically reserved for the vilest betrayals, treason, or murder. To cast out an Omega, particularly one as gentle as Finn, felt unconscionable. Elara lunged forward, shattering the invisible constraints of her position. Liam, you can't. Please, reconsider. Her voice, normally a soothing balm that calmed disputes and inspired trust, was shredded with raw anguish. Finn has done nothing to warrant this. He didn't initiate enough, Elara, Liam bellowed, finally meeting her eyes. The honeyed depths had turned to glacial shards. He tainted my Luna. He dared to steal the heart that belonged to this pack. That is a violation against our traditions, against the very bedrock of our society. Elder Rowan, his face a roadmap of time and experience, emerged from the shadows behind the dais. His movements were measured, dignified, yet his presence radiated undeniable authority. Liam speaks truly, daughter. The precepts are clear. An Omega cannot aspire to the heart of an Alpha or Luna. It fractures the order, jeopardizes the health of our lineage. But what of love? Elara implored, her voice cracking under the strain. What of the truth I feel? Is rigid custom more important than joy, than the very core of who we are? Rowan sighed, a sound like dry leaves whispering their last secrets. Tradition is the skeleton that supports us, Elara. It has shielded us for countless generations. To discard it for the whims of the heart is to invite annihilation. Annihilation? Elara scoffed, a brittle laugh escaping her. We already exist in chaos, a maelstrom of suppressed passions and mandated loyalties. You deem this stability? I call it a cage. Liam reached for her, his hand extended in supplication. Elara, I beg you, don't make this more unbearable than it already is. I desired none of this. She flinched from his touch, as if scorched. Then halt it, Liam. The power to reshape this lies with you. You are the Alpha. Demonstrate fortitude, understanding. Don't allow fear to dictate your path. The silence returned, now thick with unspoken dread and simmering discontent. Liam moved his gaze from Elara's tear-streaked face to the expectant countenances of his pack. In their eyes, he witnessed trepidation, the deeply rooted conviction that any deviation from convention would herald their ruin. He spotted the flicker of dissent, a yearning for something freer, but it was swiftly consumed by the weight of generations past. He closed his eyes, his shoulders sagging in surrender. The banishment is upheld. A soft keening escaped Elara's throat. She pivoted, her gaze frantically searching the assemblage. Finn stood near the entrance, head bowed, his shoulders squared despite the palpable anguish etched across his features. Throughout the entire ordeal, he had remained withdrawn, the antithesis of Elara's desperate pleas. She pushed through the crowd, ignoring the whispers and averted eyes, till she stood before him. "Finn," she breathed, gently framing his face with her hands. His skin was unexpectedly cold. "I am so sorry. This was never my intention." He looked up, his silver orbs reflecting a deep-seated sorrow that mirrored her own. He captured her hand in his touch a silent pact, a final farewell. "Don't be, Elara. I truly understand. This outcome was always probable." "No, it wasn't. We could have challenged this. We could have rewritten the ending." He shook his head, a ghost of a smile gracing his lips. "Not yet. Perhaps. Someday. But not now. Your pack depends on you, Elara. You are their Luna. Your duty resides here." "But what of us?" she cried, the tears cascading down her face unchecked. "What of our love story?" "Our love will endure, Elara. It will continue as a beacon in the shadows. And perhaps, one day, it will light the way for future generations." He bent and placed a tender kiss on her forehead, a kiss infused with salt and fused with salt. Unspoken promises. Be resilient, Elara. Embody the Luna they believe in. And remember me, always. He turned and walked toward the open doors of the great hall, toward the unforgiving wilderness that awaited him. No one intervened. The pack observed in silence as he disappeared into the gloom, consumed by the forest that had once been his sanctuary. Elara stood motionless, her hand outstretched, as if she could still feel the echo of his touch. The silence in the great hall was absolute, shattered only by the ragged rhythm of her breath. She returned her gaze to Liam, his face a canvas of anguish and remorse. She saw the prison he had constructed for himself, the walls of habit and obligation that confined him just as completely as they had confined her. And in that instant, understood that she could no longer subsist within those walls. She would fulfill her duty as Luna, she would safeguard her pack, but she would also discover a way to honor her love for Finn, to champion a realm where Omegas were not regarded as expendable, where love was not a transgression. She would begin in small increments, with hushed words and subtle acts of defiance. She would sow seeds of uncertainty in the minds of her pack, seeds that would eventually burgeon into rebellion. She would patiently await the moment when she could finally cast off the shackles that bound her and forge a brave new world, a world where love, in its manifold forms, could flourish. The exile of Finn had not destroyed her. It had tempered her into something fiercer, something more resolute. It had ignited a fire within her that would refuse to be quelled. Sacrifice and departure, the air in Luna's chambers felt stifling, less magical. More a weight of sorrow. Elara's movements were measured, each fold of discarded finery a farewell to a life unlived, a world of silken gowns and subtle power plays, of practiced smiles and lonely vigils. Golden light poured through the expansive windows, painting the quiet room with dancing dust motes. The familiar comfort of her lavender cedar fragrance was now tainted with the bitter tang of suppressed emotion. She reached for a hungle tunic of gray wool, a world away from the ornate garb demanded of her station. This was the raiment of departure, a shedding of skin. Her fingers lingered on its coarse weave, a tangible rebuke to the silken cage she'd inhabited, with each garment stowed. Each purposeful crease, a fragment of Luna Elara crumbled away, revealing the woman beneath. A delicate knock fractured the silence. Lyra, her dearest friend and most trusted confidant, hovered in the doorway, concern etched on her face. The usual sparkle dimmed. "Elara," she breathed, her voice a fragile thread. "Are you truly doing this?" Elara turned, forcing a smile that lacked warmth. "I must, Lyra. This charade has to end." Lyra entered, closing the door, the sound echoing in the vast chamber. "But everything you've built, your influence. You could orchestrate change from within, Elara. Forge a better path." Elara sighed, running a hand through her cascade of dark hair. "How long would that take, Lyra? How many more years of false pleasantries and enforced obedience? I've tried, believe me, but I can no longer exist within this fabrication. The truth is too stark, too undeniable. But, Liam..." Lyra's voice faltered, tinged with uncertainty. "Liam has made his choice," Elara stated, a sharpness entering her tone. "He embraced tradition over affection, authority over joy. He prioritized might over right. I refuse to repeat that error." She picked up a small, exquisitely carved wooden wolf, a token from her father, turning it in her hands, her thumb gliding over its smooth contours. "This pack yearns for progress, Lyra, but I doubt it will germinate from within these walls. Sometimes utter destruction is necessary to rebuild something stronger. And you believe your departure will achieve that," Lyra countered, her brow furrowed in concern. "You think your selflessness will suddenly enlighten everyone?" "No," Elara confessed, "but it might take root. It might instigate questioning. And that will suffice for now." She carefully placed the carving in her satchel. "Please, Lyra, don't attempt to dissuade me. I need your unwavering support, not your misgivings." Lyra approached, clasping Elara's hands. "You will always have my backing, Elara. You know this. But I fear for you both. The world beyond the pack's borders is perilous, especially for an Omega. Finn possesses a deeper strength than they perceive, Elara retorted, her voice laced with fierce protection. A latent power they underestimate, and I will stand beside him, always. Lyra embraced her tightly. Then go. Find happiness. But promise me you'll be careful. She drew back, tears shimmering in her eyes. And don't forget us. Don't forget those who will remain and champion the change you envision. Elara nodded, her own eyes brimming. I won't. I promise. The sun began its descent, casting elongated shadows across the pack's domain. A chill permeated the air, carrying the essence of pine and moist earth. Elara stood at the clearing's edge, Finn firmly grasping her hand, his grip a silent pledge. The pack had assembled to witness their exit. Liam stood at the forefront, his expression an impassive mask. His gaze, normally assertive, held a flicker Elara couldn't decipher, perhaps regret? Or simply resentment. Behind him, the pack members stood in hushed observation. Their faces a mosaic of curiosity, disapproval, and, surprisingly, a glint of admiration. Elara surveyed the throng, her gaze lingering on certain individuals, young wolves she had guided, elders who had consistently treated her with respect. Even amidst disagreement, she spotted Lyra near the rear, her face a study in sorrow and defiance. Drawing a steadying breath, Elara stepped forward, her voice ringing clear and resolute despite the tremor within. I am leaving the pack, she declared, her words resonating in the stillness. I am relinquishing my role as Luna. I am choosing affection over obligation, joy over convention. A low murmur rippled through the assembled wolves. Liam remained impassive, his jaw clenched. I am aware that many of you condemn my decision, Elara pressed on. You believe I am betraying my duties, abandoning my own. But I maintain that true allegiance lies in fidelity to oneself, in heeding your heart, even when it charts a course fraught with hardship. She turned to Finn, her eyes reflecting adoration. Finn is honorable, compassionate, resilient. He deserves to be cherished, revered, and embraced for his true self. And I will not idly stand by while he is vilified for something as sacred as love. Turning back to the pack, her gaze swept over them. I hope that, in time, you will comprehend my choice. I hope that, in time, you will cultivate a society where affection is not a transgression, where differences are celebrated, and where everyone is empowered to be their authentic selves. She squeezed Finn's hand. But until that day dawns, we must seek refuge elsewhere. We must find a sanctuary where we can be ourselves, where we can love unreservedly. Meeting Liam's gaze, her own unwavering, she said, I wish you peace, Liam. I hope you discover contentment, even apart from me. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away, Finn at her side. They journeyed toward the setting sun, their forms receding against the vibrant canvas of the evening sky. The pack watched them depart, the silence punctuated only by the whispering leaves and the forlorn cry of a distant wolf. Elara didn't glance back. She couldn't. Her past receded behind her. Her future, uncertain yet brimming with promise, stretched before her. A leader's awakening, a pall of unease hung over the packlands, heavier than the scent of pine after rain. Elara's absence had ripped a hole in their world, felt not just by Liam, but by everyone who called this place home. From the Alpha's balcony, he watched the wind buffet his hair, a physical echo of his inner storm. Pack members drifted, their movements lacking purpose, eyes flitting about as if expecting some terrible upheaval. The usual sounds, children's peals of glee, the comforting crackle of cook fires were absent, replaced by a disquieting hush. Descending the stone steps, Liam's boots clicked on the path. He noticed Maya, a young she-wolf scarcely transformed, clutching her little brother's hand. Their questioning, frightened gazes locked with his. He offered a weak smile, knowing it barely touched their fear. Their uncertainty mirrored his own gnawing doubts. He needed guidance, clarity. He needed Elder Rowan. The Elder's dwelling, a humble stone structure, sat at the forest's edge. The air there always held a cool stillness, laden with the aroma of rich soil and ancient lore. Roland sat upon a woven mat, his weathered face a map of countless seasons, though age had clouded his vision. His eyes still possessed a piercing wisdom that could see through any facade. "Liam," Rowan greeted, his voice a dry rustle. "The winds of change are upon us. What burdens your spirit?" Liam knelt, the weight of his alpha status suddenly immense. "Elara, her departure has unsettled the pack." Doubt festers in their eyes. Rowan inclined his head in understanding. "Tradition holds great strength, Alpha, but even the mightiest river can be redirected. But the laws, the mating bonds, they are the bedrock of our society," Liam countered, a note of pleading in his voice. "Without them, we invite chaos." "Chaos or growth?" Rowan challenged, his gaze unflinching. "For generations we have held fast to these decrees, deeming them sacrosanct. But have they truly delivered us to tranquility? Or have they fashioned a gilded cage, imprisoning us in a cycle of bitterness and discontent?" The Elder's words resonated within Liam, a discordant note he couldn't ignore. He recalled Elara, her vibrant spirit suppressed, her laughter diminished by duty's demands. He thought of Finn, the quiet resolve that shone in his eyes despite his Omega status. Countless others had suffered in silence, compelled to fit a mold that offered no comfort. "But what other way is there?" Liam asked, his voice tinged with trepidation. "If we discard tradition, what will bind us together?" "Allegiance, reverence, and comprehension," Rowan answered, his voice ringing with certainty. "Not unthinking obedience, but a deliberate choice to strive together for the betterment of all. We must seek a path that honors our heritage while embracing progress. A future where affection is not dictated by station, but determined by the heart." Liam arose, his mind a maelstrom of possibilities and misgivings. He thanked Rowan and stepped back into the crisp air. Returning to the Alpha's house, he noticed more pack members congregating in small clusters, their murmurs carried by the breeze. He paused, eavesdropping on their exchanges. "Did you see the way she gazed at him?" It was palpable, more genuine than anything I've ever witnessed. "But an Omega? That's unheard of. It defies everything we hold dear. Perhaps it's time we embraced a different belief." Each overheard fragment struck Liam like a physical blow, challenging his long-held assumptions. He had always believed in the power of convention, in the need to uphold order. Yet now he saw the fissures in their foundation, the resentment bubbling beneath the surface. Elara's desertion was more than a personal rejection. It was a crucible, revealing the flaws in their very structure. Reaching the Alpha's residence, he retreated to his study. He poured a generous measure of whiskey and sank into his chair, gazing out at the sprawling lands. The setting sun cast elongated shadows, bathing the terrain in shades of burnt orange and violet. A breathtaking panorama, yet tonight it offered no solace. He swirled the amber liquid, the flickering candlelight dancing within its depths. He recalled Elara's words, her entreaties for him to see beyond the confines of custom. He had dismissed them as fanciful, idealistic. But now, he questioned if she had been right all along. His thoughts drifted to Finn. He'd always considered Finn to be weak, inconsequential, an omega. But he couldn't forget the defiance gleaming in Finn's eyes as he departed with Elara. There was strength there, a quiet determination Liam had failed to recognize. Liam took a slow drink, the fiery liquid tracing a path down his throat. He closed his eyes, attempting to silence the clamoring voices in his mind, the uncertainties gnawing at his resolve. But they persisted, growing louder, more insistent. He stood at a crossroads. He could cling to the past, defend the traditions that had shaped their society for generations. Or he could gamble on the future, risking everything in the hope of forging a better world for his pack. He opened his eyes, his gaze hardening with purpose. He knew his course. He had to be the leader his pack deserved, not the leader they anticipated. He had to chart a new course, a path that honored their heritage while embracing progress, a path that made room for affection, for individuality, for genuine liberation. He stood and moved to his desk. Grasping a piece of parchment, he began to write. He couldn't foresee what lay ahead, but one thing was certain: the old ways were no longer viable. The pack was evolving, and he, as their alpha, had to evolve alongside them. A new dawn sunbeams, fractured by the forest canopy, painted whirling patterns on Elara and Finn as they paused at the border of their pack's territory. Elara's pack held merely the essentials, yet its weight felt crushing, a tangible representation of all she was relinquishing. Beside her, Finn's usually placid features betrayed an anxiety that mirrored her own churning emotions. His hand clasped hers, an anchor in the tempest of her thoughts. The air tasted of rich earth and held the weight of unpronounced farewells. "Ready?" Finn rumbled, the sound vibrating through her. She managed a nod, her throat too tight for speech. Ready to embrace the unknown? Far from it. But she was prepared to face it at his side. That made all the difference. A sharp cry tore through the stillness. "Elara! Finn! Halt!" "Liam!" Her heart lurched. Turning, she met his gaze across the clearing. He stood firm, shoulders squared, jaw tight, radiating the authority of the alpha. Yet beneath the surface, a flicker of unfamiliar vulnerability sparked in his eyes. Finn stiffened beside her, his grip tightening protectively. Poised to defend their choice, he met a gentle pressure from Elara's answering squeeze, a silent plea for him to hold back. This confrontation was hers. With deliberate strides, Liam approached, his boots hushed on the dewy grass. His flanking warriors remained respectfully distant, their faces a tableau of bewilderment and trepidation. Tension crackled, heavy with the unspoken query. What would their leader decide? "Where do you imagine you're going?" Liam demanded, his voice controlled, yet with a tremor. Elara held his stare, refusing to yield. "We're leaving, Liam. You know this." "Leaving? To where?" "Abandoning us." He swept a hand towards the warriors, the territory, the familiar cadence of their lives. "Does this stem from conflict with pack traditions?" "It transcends that, Liam," Elara responded, her voice steady despite the tremor in her fingers. "It speaks to liberty, to choice, to love." Her gaze softened as she met Finn's eyes. "Something you've always denied me." Pain flashed across Liam's face. "I offered you everything, Elara. The Luna status, the pack's respect, a secure existence. You offered me a gilded prison, Liam, she retorted, her tone gaining strength. Comfortable, perhaps, yet still confined. I crave more than security. I desire authenticity. Liam drew a deep breath, his posture slumping slightly. He shifted his gaze between Elara and Finn, then back again. I've engaged in serious introspection, he admitted, his tone subdued, almost uncertain. Regarding Elder Rowan's wisdom, regarding the trajectory of this pack. Elara arched an eyebrow, surprised. And to what conclusions have you arrived, Alpha? Liam paused, then met her eyes squarely. I've come to understand that the hold precepts no longer serve. They breed discord and resentment. The pack is fragmenting. A low murmur spread through the assembled warriors. Liam raised a hand, silencing them. I cannot rewrite history, he continued, his voice firming. But I possess the power to shape our future, and that future demands transformation. He paused, inhaling deeply. I extend an offer of compromise. Elara and Finn exchanged glances, their expressions cautious. What form does this compromise take? Elara inquired. I will remain Alpha, Liam declared, his authoritative tone returning. The pack requires leadership, guidance through this period. However you, Elara, you, are granted the freedom to select your mate. Silence fell, a heavy blanket muffling the dawn. Elara stared at Liam, her thoughts racing. Had she understood correctly? Was he genuinely offering her freedom of choice? Finn squeezed her hand, his eyes reflecting her own bewilderment. Liam persisted, his gaze locked on Elara. You can remain here, with Finn as your chosen partner. You will retain your position of influence within the pack, should you desire it. Or you can depart. The decision rests with you. I believe we hold the potential to forge a new kind of pack, one where love and loyalty are not shackled by antiquated laws. The warriors erupted, a cacophony of disbelief and dawning understanding. Some looked aghast, others merely confused, still others hopeful. The pack stood divided, loyalties torn between ingrained tradition and the alluring vision of a brighter tomorrow. A gravelly voice cut through the din. Alpha, this cannot be. It's utter madness. It defies everything we uphold. Gareth, Liam's second, contorted with anger. Liam turned to him, his gaze unwavering. Gareth, I comprehend your concerns, but my decision stands. The old ways are failing us. We must adapt or face collapse. Turning back to Elara, his eyes pleaded. Please, Elara, offer us a chance. Offer the pack a chance. Offer us a chance at renewal. Elara looked to Finn, then back to Liam. The weight of the impending decision crushed her. This represented everything she had yearned for, everything she had fought for. But could she truly place her faith in Liam? Could she trust her pack to embrace so seismic a shift? She scanned the faces of the warriors, registering their uncertainty and tentative hope. She glimpsed the possibility of a more promising future, where love held a place of honor, not condemnation. Drawing a shaky breath, her heart hammered in her chest. I require time to contemplate this, she whispered, her voice barely audible. It's a monumental decision. Liam nodded, relief washing over his features. Of course, take all the time needed, but please weigh the potential benefits. He turned and began the walk back toward the assembled pack, his posture erect, his head held high. The warriors parted before him, their gaze fixed on him, their faces a study in awe and trepidation. As Liam disappeared into the trees, Elara turned to Finn. "What's our course?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Finn framed her face with his hands, his gaze filled with love and understanding. "We'll decide together." The motes of dust continued their dance in the burgeoning dawn, but now they seemed to shimmer with the nascent light of hope. The air remained heavy with the scent of damp earth, but mingled with it a nascent scent of something new, the promise of transition, the promise of a new dawn. Love's transcendence, the burden of her decision, was a suffocating presence, each breath a conscious effort. Dawn bled across the horizon, a tentative palette of color mirroring the conflict within. She had spent the hours circling the pack's territory, the familiar balm of pine and earth failing to quell the storm in her mind. Each snap of a twig felt like a censure, every elongated shadow a looming threat. She discovered Finn near the edge of the whispering woods. The ancient trees, weathered and knowing, stood as silent witnesses. He sat on a moss-draped trunk, his form hunched in a mirroring of her own exhaustion. A subtle energy thronged around him, the quiet signature of his omega nature. "Finn," she managed, her voice a fragile sound. He turned, his silver gaze meeting hers. There was no expectation, no demand, only a quiet acceptance of whatever path lay ahead. That quietude was a painful twist. "Elara," he murmured. She approached, the short distance feeling immense. Kneeling, she took his hands. His skin, warm and rough-hewn, offered a stark familiarity. "Liam presented a choice," she began, her voice catching. "He said I could choose you and remain as Luna." Surprise flickered in Finn's eyes. "He offered that?" Elara affirmed. "He said, tradition shouldn't eclipse happiness." Silence stretched, punctuated by birdsong. Elara scrutinized Finn, seeking a clue to his desires, but his expression was a blank canvas. "And what do you desire, Elara?" he asked, his voice low and sincere. "Forget the pack, Liam, everything expected. What whispers in your soul?" Her heart had roared Finn's name for so long, she'd nearly forgotten quiet. She met his gaze, seeing beyond Omega, beyond taboo, a spirit echoing her own, craving the same liberation and kindness. "I choose you, Finn," she declared, her voice gaining strength. "Above all else, I choose you." Relief flooded Finn's face, a transformation. He enveloped her in his embrace, his body trembling. "I love you, Elara," he breathed, thick with feeling. "I never believed, I never dared to dream a." She clung to him, burying her face in the curve of his neck, inhaling his essence. The resinous scent of pine and damp soil, intertwined with Finn's uniquely sweet undertone, the very scent of belonging. For a timeless moment, they were lost, cocooned in their connection. As they drew apart, the sun had climbed higher, casting long shadows. "We have to inform Liam," Elara asserted, her voice firm. Finn concurred. "Together, we will." Hand in hand, they walked toward the pack house, their strides resolute. The courtyard air hung heavy with anticipation. Warriors clustered, their faces etched with worry, voices subdued. They parted for Elara and Finn, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and foreboding. Liam awaited them at the center, his face unreadable. Elder Rowan stood beside him, disapproval radiating from his figure. "Elara," Liam began, his voice even. "Have you decided?" Elara inhaled deeply, bracing herself. She sought strength in Finn's presence. "I have, Liam," she announced, her voice resonating across the space. "I choose Finn." A collective gasp swept through the crowd. Elder Rowan surged forward, his face contorted with fury. "This is an abomination," he thundered. "A betrayal of our ways. You cannot choose an Omega, Elara. It is forbidden." Liam raised a hand, silencing the elder. He faced Elara, his eyes reflecting a complex brew of emotions, perhaps regret, but also understanding. "I may not concur with your choice, Elara," he said, his tone measured but resolute. "However, I respect it. I pledge to honor your freedom, and I will." He addressed the pack, his voice ringing out. "Many of you will find this difficult," he acknowledged. "But I believe we must evolve to thrive. We cannot be chained to outdated customs that shackle our happiness and progress. Elara has chosen Finn, and I will support them both as leaders." A murmur of dissent spread. Several warriors stepped forward, their faces hard with anger. "This is madness, Liam," one bellowed. "You are destroying everything we hold sacred. Tradition binds us," another added. "Without it, we are lost." Liam stood firm, his gaze unflinching. "Tradition is valuable," he stated, "but not at the price of love and compassion. We can honor our heritage while building a brighter future." He glanced at Elara and Finn, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "This pack needs both power and empathy," he stated. "Elara brings the empathy. Finn possesses unwavering strength of character. Together, they can guide us to a future where tradition and love coexist." Though the air remained taut, a seed of hope had taken root. Some warriors nodded slowly, their expressions softening. Others remained dubious, their eyes clouded with skepticism. Elara stepped forward, clasping Finn's hand tightly. She spoke to the pack, her voice brimming with sincerity and resolve. "This is a trying time," she began. "But I believe we can bridge this divide and forge a stronger, more understanding community. We can honor our past while embracing change. We can find common ground, understand one another, embrace one another, regardless of differences." She turned to Liam, her gratitude evident. "Thank you, Liam," she said, "for the choice, for the opportunity to build something better." Liam nodded, his expression softening. He stepped forward, placing a hand on Elara's shoulder, then Finn's. "Let us lead together," he proposed. "Let us demonstrate that a pack can be both formidable and compassionate, that tradition and love can intertwine, that alphas and omegas can unite in purpose." The sun pierced the clouds, bathing the courtyard in a warm, golden glow. It was a new dawn for the pack, one filled with hope, uncertainty, and the promise of a better tomorrow. A future where love superseded tradition, where compassion reigned, and where all, regardless of status or ability, found belonging.